You see him before, don't you? Is he the same? Perhaps. Once were together, only separated by his will. At last, 7 versions of himself stands in unison. Maybe 5 more to make 12, a number as much as his age. You might have asked, has he been living for this long? Perhaps, perhaps, perhaps. One. Two. Three. Four. Five. Six. Seven. Had he always been there? Perhaps living a life as a living miracle, one they never fully understood, even myself.
In this dev diary, we're going to be talking about 2 more Warframes. We're going to be talking about Excalibur, which is one of the starting Warframes, and Rhino, which is our biggest, most brutish Warframe.
Rhino is introduced at the vanilla of Warframe at October 25, 2012, where the game enters closed beta, along with the Warframes I call the OGs, Excalibur, Mag, Loki, Volt, Trinity, Ash, and Ember. If you count the date, Rhino has been in the game for over 11 years, and just 25 days shy of being 12 as of the writing of this script, just like other OG frames. In those 8 frames and a few distinct class system of DPS, support, control, and more, Rhino is the only tank-based frame amongst them, referencing the design of a rhinoceros. Rhinoceros, or a part of what the scientific name called Rhinocerotidae, which are 5 members of the extant species of the odd-toed ungulates. Not going to dive into the history of said species, as this is not a history documentary video, but let's talk about the common word associations when you think about a rhinoceros. Rhinoceros is commonly associated with strength or very tanky if you wish it to be said in the gamer way. Such trait is reflected clearly on the design of Rhino, which is a tank-based Warframe in Warframe. Not only that, don't let their over a ton, humongous size deceive you. An adult rhinoceros can run at a top speed of 40 to 55 km per hour, as from the website Animalia Facts said, they ran so fast that they almost feel like a tank made out of flesh and blood with large horn on their nose, which is represented clearly by Digital Extreme themselves as you look into the lore of Rhino, adjusted for a power fantasy settings. The beast surges forward and the security men become crimson mist and gore. The beast surges forward is a clear reference to Rhino Charge, Rhino's first ability. Rhino charges forward for a base range of 12 meters that has a combo multiplier that can decrease the cost and increase the final range of set dash. Iron Skin allows Rhino to make his skin flow like mercury and absorb enemy damage and turns into additional health, aka overguard within the first 3 seconds of invulnerability plus additional scaling from armor as well. His third, Raw, provides a damage increase equivalent to an universal faction damage mod to weapons and abilities to himself and allies around him. And finally, Rhino Storm will tumble anything around 25 meters of him into stasis, disrupting time in the process for 8 seconds at base that slows for 97.5% with the additional undocumented 2 seconds of getting up. This is mostly a simple overview of Rhino's base kit, and it seems boring and shallow, right? That is probably how over 90% of the player base views Rhino. Rhino is commonly associated as a boring frame with straightforward synergies. You have players going the most bland and uninteresting setup that is making your skin numbers as large as you can, sourcing every single bit of increase for that. The shallowness of one's mind clearly reflected on the setup, the unsophisticated method of trying to make things look very good with a little practicality on it. All magnified under the natural design of Rhino, his deceptive nature. A lot of frames has distinct playstyles set for them, like what is the main focus of set frame, like nuking, speedrunning, tanking, crowd control, gun buffer, support, or a mix between these few and more. Frames themselves are designed to set things. Most of them have straightforward answers to what they are best at, like Hero, which is commonly known to be best at gun buffing due to his entire kit are designed to enable a gun-focused playstyle, forming what is considered to be one of the best kit design in Warframe because just how streamlined his whole kit are. Everything just flows together and syncs. You have support DPS tank frames like Hildrin, who can provide great support to your team via her 3.5 second shield gate and great shield regen via her 3, and can withstand many attacks with the use of her 2, Pillage, and capable to deal damage via her first. They all have set playstyles and clear routes on what they excels at, and players can pick it up immediately by just looking into it a bit. This, however, doesn't work for Rhino. Looking back into Rhino's entire base kit once again, it seems that there is just nothing much to talk about, right? How about I told you that there's a lot of hidden nuances that you might not even know? Allow me to be very frank because genuinely, over 99% of the player base doesn't even know how Rhino Charge should be used. People thought that Rhino Charge didn't carry your momentum, but that cannot be further from the truth. People uses Rhino Charge like what you see on the screen, but no one will do it like this. First, do you see that I use Rhino Charge with my feet up in the air instead of the ground? This is due to Rhino Charge preserving a different kind of momentum. In midair, if you cancel bullet jump into a charge, your bullet jump distance is carried over instead and replaced by Rhino Charge speed of 48 meters per second, and it is added into the charge distance. That's not all. Rhino Charge silently provides a lot of controllability to its users because unlike all the speeding skills, you can freely move your camera when you are dashing, which means that you can easily adjust yourself to where you want to dash afterwards. And when casting charge, if you decided not to commit to this direction, you can still change your charge mid-casting animation and do something like this. And with how bullet jump cancel is incorporated into your gameplay, you can do bullet jump, charge, double jump, charge, or bullet jump, charge, and roll, and more. As when you aim glide and charge, Rhino Charge will dash straight midair, and if you choose to fall down, charge will curve itself down instead, just like many other speed abilities. Also, do I mention that it also indirectly scales with parkour velocity as well due to bullet jump being preserved? Rhino Charge isn't just a simple charge. it becomes a movement cancelling ability, which all are essential to be moving swiftly in Warframe. There's so much more that I can talk about, but that's for the overly comprehensive guide to Rhino. Let's just keep this short. His design is simple, not because he is for the new players that want easy to learn frames. Rhino is a frame who is easy to use, but takes a person's entire knowledge of what they know about Warframe itself to master him properly at peak levels. Rhino isn't just a normally designed frame amongst the rosters, he is an enigma, the frame that shows you the foundation of Warframe, the fundamental itself. Rhino as a frame is a mirror, reflects a model that is you. Rhino Charge, Iron Skin, Raw and Rhino Storm. Movement, tanking, damage amplification, support and crowd control, and maybe just a bit of nuking. 4 out of 5 pillars of Warframe, Rhino basically covers it. Rhino Charge aside, Iron Skin teaches you how to make use of your enemy to your advantage. Manipulating enemy AI becomes necessary. Learning enemy hit patterns naturally throughout your learning process, and how can you make use of them? When do you want them to hit you the most, and when do you don't want them to hit you at all? You use Raw to enhance your weapons and boost your teammates. You use Rhino Storm to make enemies not hit you when you shoot your weapons. It serves as a backup when you want some breathing room, and it fits back into Iron Skin because enemies' AI are essentially forced to be stopped, the purpose of a crowd control ability. Rhino's entire kit feels like it serves to teach you the game itself, the fundamentals of Warframe, what pillars that exist in Warframe. But have you heard of something like this? Things that brought the most destruction aren't those who are flashy and cool, but those that are simple and straightforward in nature. Simplicity often brings the most destructive power, and the world shall have it be known. You would think that Rhino is an insane generalist, that he may not be the best at anything he does, but extremely close to be at top at everything, while specialists like Revenant may be better in one particular case, aka tanking. But Rhino isn't your typical jack of all trades or generalist like Nerza, Gara, Gauss, etc. They excel in a lot of things at once, but they might not be close to be the best at everything, but definitely above decent, sometimes even great at something. But here's a problem. Rhino is never a generalist. Looks like one, but once you understood him, he was never one from the beginning. After a certain level of understanding on Rhino, the raw amounts of pure survivability that Rhino can dish out eventually surpass everyone, even Revenant. Revenant is definitely easier to use and requires lesser learning curves. But when it comes to sheer raw survivability, from utilizing melee block and movements to his abilities and augments, there's so many methods for Rhino to survive. Iron Skin is also a true zero mod investment if enemy damage scaling is utilized. Basically means that Iron Skin is basically the same even without those expensive endgame mods. That's why I always said, when you mod Rhino, the last thing you should worry about is Iron Skin. Speaking about that, Rhino basically have permanent invulnerability uptime around level cap. If you even pay any sort of attention, taking damage to shields or health is close to impossible, let alone dying at all. And that's just one of the many aspects of Rhino that he specializes in. A frame who pretends to be a generalist, yet a silent specialist who specializes in everything. Rhino Charge, when fully understood and utilized, is easily top tier in practical speed. He may not be the fastest in top speed, but because his speed is very practical and controllable, Rhino can breeze through general missions without much trouble. Also, this ability is extremely cheap to cast with 6.25 energy at 4x combo plus 100 efficiency, 1.5625 if 175%. It requires only a bit of casting speed and range to shine, which is what Rhino needs in other parts of his kit. That means that all he needs is a bit of parkour velocity, which is just a parkour velocity mod, making this ability extremely easy to invest into without much sacrifice. Iron Skin, I explained everything just now. Let's not repeat those again. Raw, should I even say anything about the holy trinity of buffs? Rhino Storm, who could even comprehend the sheer power that is a radial 97.5 fixed slow that needs close to literally zero investment, no travel speed, no ramping up, no line of sight requirement, extremely high base of 25 meters, can slow bosses, can slow demolish, acolytes, necromax, can break spy cameras, can do stealth farm, can low level nuke, the strongest CC, and one of the most versatile power in-game, along with Limbo's Rift. At times, a frame having one S-tier ability is considered meta staples. Revenant was meta because of him having such ability, despite the rest of his ability is just But because the requirement is rich, he definitely deserves that spot. Rhino is the only frame in the game who is capable of having 4 S-tier abilities just by existing. Some subsumables that are previously A-tier in power can also be elevated into the S-tier category in Rhino's hands due to his kit. Speaking about subsumes, I don't want to talk about it here. You can just go to my entire channel and look at it while evaluate yourself, since we are talking about base kit here and base kit only. I will talk about it if it is needed. Rhino's base kit, despite simple, holds immense power and its extremely straightforward approach to anything. He has been like this since the inception of Warframe. Rhino never changed. Everyone around him have changed and improved, but he will always remain as Rhino, the resilient one. 12 years had gone. Frames received their direct buffs, reworks, and changes, but Rhino is still Rhino. A lot of frames nowadays, when you talk about the current meta staples, majority of them used to be only just decent or niche at best, or just straight up bad. Saren used to be a one-trick pony who knows only 4th spam, and Vogue has gone from just a mediocre frame to now being quite phenomenal by many changes throughout the years. Looking into the OG frames, majority of them have received changes and buffs. Frames like Nyx and Trinity are promised with buffs, or like reworks had previously received their fair share of changes and buffs, like Nyx 1st to 4th and Trinity's Well of Life. Even Ashe had received some changes and buffs, have highs and lows in his Warframe journey, and even Loki, who is touted to receive 0 changes throughout the entire journey of Warframe, had finally received 2 big changes that elevates his kit more. Rhino watches them as the world spins around him. He doesn't move, he simply does not need to. Rhino is still the Rhino that you used to know. Rhino doesn't have any direct changes for 9 whole years. No buff to his kit, nothing. The change to his iron skin into Overguard should just be visual changes, but somehow brought benefits to him. Full status immunity in the 3-second period, on damage arcanes finally worked on him, and that 0.5 second gate was initially made for Quilevel and 0.5 second for everyone else and the other Overguard centric frames, yet it fills the final hole in his kit. Second, the augment buffs was for everyone as well. Everyone got a fair share of increase. Rhino was no exception. People discuss who redefined Warframe's kit design for many years. Is it Harold? Is it Nidus? Or is it Gauss? Or is it Ardus? People argue, debated, but long gone was the title. There's no redefining for you to seek to crown your desired choice. It was gone when the game comes out, and that peak was never once reached again. In majority of the game nowadays, it's really common to have a character's kit to slowly fall behind in terms of power. Even the meta or top picks are no exception to this golden rule. They gain what they had right now through buffs and changes from the developers themselves, and slowly become must-have in the respective game. Buffs are given to elevate a character and nerfs are given to tone down a certain character. This is what we call game balance, broadly and briefly explained by me. Warframe is no exception to this rule. Frames needed their respective buffs and reworks to keep up with the game itself. This is why reworks and changes to their kit are requested to frames that might need such help. Characters might be considered meta staples for a certain period, but soon they will just fall off if they cannot catch up with the game itself. This applies to everyone else, to all the characters in gaming, but for once, it doesn't work. Rhino was at the top, not for one, not for two, but possibly 12 whole years. From the existence of Warframe until now, or until forever. He barely aged, or even aged at all. What's baffling is that he even got stronger and stronger as the game progressed itself to each stage of the game, like a fine wine showing its value as the time progressed. Why? His approach to the system itself are so raw and straightforward that it peels down all the nitty-gritties and shows you the very core of each concept. It becomes Warframe itself, with each update constantly giving him indirect buffs after indirect buffs due to how the game system as a whole are built and how his kit has thoroughly linked within the game itself. Now he just scales with the game itself from the beginning to the end. A frame that requires so little to work at peak functionality. A frame who is cheap to build, quick to access. A frame who had everything. A frame who is the very game itself. No matter how much the game progresses, he will always be there on the top. There's not a single kit design ever in history that can stood the test of time in this fashion like the way he does. No longer he is just a frame who follows the theme of rhinoceros. It slowly embodies majority of the untaught themes in Warframe, habits of a player, concepts, and so much more. Breaking that thin veil that wrote shallow exposes the true depth of Rhino, a rabbit hole that you shouldn't jump into. As you get your hands on Rhino, he simply doesn't tell you anything much about himself. Rhino has 4 abilities that covers the concept of the game itself. But as you master Rhino himself, you can slowly feel like Rhino was talking concepts and themes to you. You might not get it immediately, but you will eventually. Eventually, as they said, and yet you never introduce yourself properly. Perhaps I should do it for you, huh? Rhino teaches you to be practical. From Rhino Charge to Rhino Storm, not just seeking big numbers, beautiful things, and what is the most eye-catching. Rhino Charge wants you to master the very movement of the game itself by blending it into your movements. Rhino's Iron Skin requires you to understand the enemy itself, like what we said in Chinese, 知彼知己,百战百胜, or understand your foe and yourself, and you will win in every battle. Know how they shoot, know how they attack you, use it to your advantage, and reverse such knowledge into evading their firepower. In that 3-second phase, He also teaches you patience. Many simply lack it. A clear reflection of the state of the game itself. Nothing but dopamine hits littering the space. Patience is virtue. Many dream they could possess such inner power. He also teaches you to be disciplined, be mindful, and master self-control. Misuse of either Piercing Roar or Rhino Storm will yield negative results, and when you use it properly, it becomes your greatest strength that will aid you in battle. He wants you to learn him, not some impractical setups that completely misses the whole point of Rhino's old kit. Practicality is boring, and Rhino is the embodiment of practicality and versatility at its peak. He teaches you to be versatile. Use the tools available in your kit to aid you, and not just use one button and call it a day. Adapt to the environment, fit into the environment. With the introduction of the helmet system, this is magnified further. Now Rhino also teaches you to try out everything, to think out of the box, know how to change and spice things up. Helmet system and Rhino is a whole rabbit hole on its own, but all you need to know is that he is now a modular, a canvas. What you want Rhino to be played like. He doesn't tell you its true team at the first glance, but extensive play and learning of him will show you his true colors. Hearing me talking this much about Rhino, have you ever wondered that the game itself is also the main cause of this? And once have I said that he scales with the game itself? As the game slowly shifts into the current timeline of 2024, here lies two frames. Both had something similar, yet the final outcome was different. Both frames are the result of the power creep that Warframe had got itself into, yet both of them have head towards a completely different path. Revenant becomes a frame many will call one-trick pony, which isn't entirely bad on its own as long as you are very good at that. He doesn't have much other than survivability in a place where survivability is so easily obtained, but because his method was easier and more accessible, he became many beginners' training wheels, and just a frame that is better for those who simply lack the understanding of the game or haven't reached that point of able to somewhat understand the game. A frame for the general player base, good for its purpose, but just lack of anything else outside. A canvas with little space for creativity, but does its job fine. Rhino's innate boringness comes from his sheer practicality and his approach to everything. He is not really open to those who are new to the game, but simply a frame devoid of nothing in the right hands. Rhino becomes a canvas that has no borders, a frame who tells you nothing. Yet because the game itself, his approach, the power he innately possesses, Rhino becomes the opposite of Revenant and that very idea. Instead of just being insane at one thing, Rhino becomes insane at everything. I always said, it is best to not compare with Rhino at his full potential, just because he can do what you do and what you cannot do at the same time with absolute efficiency. Comparison is a devil of joy, and he is always that devil. Mind you, this is not me trying to compare, just play whatever you vibe the most with. Revenant is the product under the extreme power creep where things becomes easy that he can handle them fine and serve for a purpose that many players favor. Rhino is the living manifestation of the extreme power creep itself, breaking the game in every shape or form that he desires, single-handedly trivializing every single content in the game by himself. The very vitals of Warframe exposed wide and clear upon his gaze. Hearing me yap this much and probably glazing at this point, I think you can see why Rhino needs so little changes over the years to stay at the top. But you did think such power is easily gained. This is Rhino at its truest form, a true god amongst the ones who proclaim so. Rhino was not this powerful if you don't know anything about him. Learning Rhino takes Herculean effort from one, not because it is hard to play, insanely hard to master. Rhino is easy to play, but understanding Rhino is extremely difficult and time consuming due to how insanely vast he can suddenly become when it comes to modding, synergies, optimization and so much more. To understand him, you had to play him way more than over 99% of the frames to even grasp some of his potential. He wants your full dedication, and this is why he is barely understood. A frame that keeps itself silent, leaves no clues, sets nothing for you to chase for, just like Warframe as a game itself. Canvas with no set themes, no guide within the mass unending voids. You'll be lost within, and not knowing where to even go. Being of thousand forms that holds the ability to mimic, yet always distinctively himself. Rhino, despite being the most synergistic with Helminth, doesn't demand it. For him, everything else is a side grade to enhance one certain part of his, but losing one certain part that he is very good at. Trading Rhino charge makes Rhino significantly slower, but gains more firepower or even control, sometimes even the ability to kill by his own hands. There's a sort of balance between Rhino's entire kit, where Rhino will always lack of one thing when certain setups are used, commonly being his mobility, and when he had all the mobility he wants, he lacks the power to kill by his own hands. Rhino, despite being insanely powerful in every single thing he touches, he always cannot have everything at the same time, which encourages the player to always switch the setups and experiment with him, bring what is suitable for the situation or the setup, further pushing his theme of versatility. He is uber powerful at everything, yet balanced by always just shy of having every single thing in the game at the same time. Everything was balanced on a fine line of extremely broken at anything, yet has drawbacks that prevented him from just literally breaking the game entirely with ease. Rhino can give you over the top levels of survivability, but you must be active and not letting your guard down because you felt like a god. Complacency is little. Must you remember before it is too late? It once was used to kill many gods and goddesses. Shall you not be its next victim? He can give you everything, but you must earn it with your own blood and sweat. Understand him, realize his true potential, and not to be mad about it when you are yet to deserve it. Everything is earned, not given, and you should keep this in mind. Prove your worth, show your dedication, and you will be greatly rewarded. Seeing that title, if any of you knew Rhino, you would say that it is Rhino's passive, right? Rhino passive used to be deemed as pretty weak, but it's actually kinda not. Not gonna spend time explaining it here again though. I did a video about it already, feel free to check it out, but still, while the newfound use of the passive is nice, but I feel like it still can be way better than what I have previously mentioned. It's situationally insane, but plus, I already have some cool idea for Rhino's passive before the discovery, so I'ma tell you about it regardless. Rhino rapidly increases his speed and velocity up to 25% when moving, reduces weapon recoil by 95% and 50% faster reload while standing still. Speed increases at a rate of 25% per second, and the buff will disappear immediately if you are not moving for 1 second. It provides positive increase to his kit, like the parkour velocity for Rhino Charge, complementing the original theme of Rhinoceros, and somewhat still communicate the visual design of Rhino. An absolute unit, a very bulky and strong Warframe, which are communicated through the things that requires muscles to execute better. This also provides the player a choice. Either you can have increased mobility or heavily reduced weapon recoil with additional reload speed. Rhino Charge, despite being his bread and butter speed ability, just doesn't have much use outside of what it is good at. It's a pretty cool low level new ability with its scaling potential, but it could do much more to stay somewhat relevant outside of just speed. And I'm not talking about Ironclad Charge. It's a noob trap for new Rhino players, and it's very niche and only suited for certain builds. I would only propose giving Rhino Charge, make it cast faster, give Rhino a set 10 energy per enemy hit, and increase the hit radius from 2 meter to 5. Could possibly change Ragdoll into a knockdown or heavy stagger only. While I could suggest something related to damage increase or just turn this into another pseudo exalted, Rhino doesn't need more damage already. While it definitely allows him to deal way more damage, but Rhino could use more utility buffs instead of just more power. As for the rest of his ability, if you choose which ability has to be somewhat buffed, only plausible choice is just increase raw from 50 to 75%, and you already know how much this can snowball. Unskin at Rhino Storm for now is already perfect, and there's nothing I can suggest. Maybe just give more incentives to cast Rhino Storm outside of augment, and for CC purposes like enemy take increased damage from Rhino only? I honestly don't know. Rhino as a frame, once you look into more, you can see that every of his ability is capable of achieving so many things at the same time. He is not colorful. He doesn't really make you indulge in beautiful, dopamine-inducing builds. At its core, he is a boring person and just want to get things done. And that is how he is. Rhino embodies Warframe as a whole, the state of the game itself. Rhino is barely understood by many, and so does the game itself to the general player base. A frame that is friendly for the new players, yet in the correct hands with nearly full understanding of him, he will ascend and become a god. He is the undisputed frame of peak versatility, flexibility, and practicality once you achieve that level of understanding. But you need to earn it, and that journey is arduous. Many will just settle for less, and I cannot say that is your fault either. To understand Rhino to that point, you basically had to dedicate everything and become me, who had a playtime of over 2,000 hours on Rhino. You cannot expect many to wholeheartedly dedicate their time just for a singular frame. Rhino is not an utterly perfect frame. He still have minor drawbacks that holds him back, and yet he is probably the frame that is closest to absolute perfection. This is the end of the tunnel. The light is within your palm's reach. We may not meet again, but shall you at least remember the words I have said? He bears possibly the greatest kit design ever in Warframe, perhaps never ever to be topped again. There will be many phenomenal kit designs that earns the praise of players and widely celebrated. There will be many synergistic design that sparks a massive creativity, but probably none will ever able to replicate the one-of-a-kind design miracle and masterpiece that is Rhino. Anyways, I'm just glad that I can even get something like this finished and edited to my liking. So hope you all enjoy my over 5,000 words yet session that is just me strictly talking about Rhino as a frame and his miraculous design and how he had redefined kit design as a whole. But anyways, I hope you can get something new from this video. I'm a dip now. Adios.